Hello and a very warm welcome to the AI with Arun show. We have a very special guest today, Saurabh Gupta, who is the President of Research and Advisory Services at HFS Research, where he oversees the global research function and manages a team of analysts from around the world. Saurabh, a very warm welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Arun, for having me.
All right. So, Saurabh, let's get started with AI in business transformation. You are a veteran in this field. So, how are you seeing enterprises currently leveraging AI and automation to drive business transformation? And also talk to our viewers about some of the biggest challenges that you see companies face today.
Yeah, so I think when I look at the business sort of value proposition for AI, I call it the three P's of AI value proposition, and that's prediction, personalization, and productivity. You can really use AI to drive more predictive power, to forecast things, to simulate issues, to simulate circumstances. You can personalize at a mass level using AI, and obviously you can drive more cost efficiency, improve productivity. I think, unfortunately, to your second point, we've been obsessed with productivity, and we've missed a little bit on the personalization and the predictive capabilities of AI when it comes to business transformation. Because 9 out of 10 conversations that I have, people just keep asking me, "Can I take 20, 30% off using AI?" And I think that's one of the biggest challenges in this, because we're then sort of short selling the power of AI to our enterprises. I think the other big challenge is that, Arun, in most of our organizations, we've collected so much debt, and at some point of time, you have to stop. There's a limit to how much you can buy off your credit cards. You have to at some point of time pay that credit card bill, and you've got your technical debt, you've got your data debt, you've got your process debt, you've got skills debt, you've got cultural debt. And I think AI will continue to remain a dream or an ambition, which my fear is it won't be realized, not because the technology isn't there, but because we are fearful of addressing some of these big issues.
Wow, that was very well said. I mean, the three P's, that's fantastic. Prediction, personalization, and productivity. And you're right, we only focus on the third part, whereas the top two, the first two, where there is significant value to be driven, I think that goes unnoticed and unanswered. Yeah. So, Saurabh, let's talk a little bit about, you are known for spotting trends early on. So what are some of the trends that you have been seeing right now, as of happening here and now? And how are companies either taking advantage of it or missing it altogether?
I think the biggest trend that I'm seeing is there's almost like a blurring of lines between software and services. Uh, if you look at any CIO or CTO's budget, there are two line items. One is for buying services, and then one is for buying software. I think these two lines are getting blurred. And this is what we call at HFS, we coined this term last year called services as software, where almost there is a blurring of lines between software and services. Software keeps coming to us as, we've got the best workflow, you need to adapt your organization to us. And then services keep saying, we'll customize every software to your needs, and we'll take, 5 months to do that. I don't think enterprises have the patience or the budgets to do all of that. And I think one of the powers of AI, to your previous question, is we can start to sort of blur the lines between these two things, so services and software. And there's almost like a convergence that's happening between these things. I see a lot of service providers starting to launch, proprietary solutions, almost sort of buying and selling services like a software. And then I also see software providers starting to get very, very interested in the services market and seeing, can we actually disrupt or change some of these? So I think that's the biggest thing that's happening right now. I don't know who the winners will be, but I think that's the biggest trend that we are seeing, is this blurring of lines between software and services. They're no longer two completely distinct categories.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation, and while I've followed HFS and I followed your work, so I've seen this mentioned multiple times. So, what does this really mean for software companies as well as more for the service providers? Right, service providers. There are plenty of GSIs and service providers in this space. What does it really mean for them?
So look, I think if you look at the service, so I think we can address it from both sides. So if you look at services, what have we been doing over the last 3 decades or so? All we've been doing is you have a problem and we'll throw bodies at it. Right now, we've embellished that human-led solutions with some amounts of technology, and there was a digital stack. We've started to talk about cloud, but we still buy and sell services on FTE basis. I every consultant still has a rate card. Every large outsourcing provider or GSI still charges largely by FTE basis. And I think that's not a scalable model, right? How you can't just keep adding more and more bodies to it. And companies have pulled that offshoring lever. At least a lot of companies have pulled that offshoring lever. Now, unless you and I find some hidden continent under the ocean, right? We can't find more people to this. So we are reaching a point of saturation on services with this human-led model. I think on the software side, there is a feature bloat as well. Every software company comes up with, here are 5 new features. Now you need to adapt to them, you need to adopt them, and you need to customize them. And then you need to get a GSI to implement those features. And I think what we found is for every dollar spent on software, there's $5 or perhaps $10 that are spent on services. So I think that math is not adding up. At some point of time, this macroeconomics are not adding up, and we're not reducing those debts that I was talking about. We're just servicing those debts and sort of putting a band-aid on and keep sort of increasing the life of legacy. And so I think with this services as software, think of it as productized solutions. So a lot of services can be productized today and almost consumed like a software. And for the software providers, they can also get into this market, right? Who's stopping them? They always, do you need a services player to really adopt some of your software? So I think and then there could be AI native startups that also come in, right? So I think there is, as I was saying, there's this blurring of lines between software services, and it's really productized solutions is what I'm talking about. Now, right now, a lot of it is being driven by agentic AI, but there could be other ways and means of offering it. But the point of services as software is, can we have productized solutions that either replace or somewhat replace your services and software spend that you've been doing for donkey's years now?
Yeah. So, Saurabh, you mentioned about AI agents, all right, and Gen AI. So, let's talk about them. How do you see adoption of these today, particularly for GSIs and and ISVs as well? And what are some of the challenges that they're facing today in terms of the adoption? There's a lot of POC work that is happening, by the way, which we
Yeah,
see.
I was gonna I was gonna say the same thing. I think there's a death by 1,000 POCs. That's what's happening right now. There's just every organization has a POC or a pilot running in every nook and corner of their organization. And we did some research recently where we reached out to, I think, 500 or 600 enterprises, and only 10% said that they've been able to scale it up to some extent. And our definition of scaling up was fairly loose, and even then, it was in low single digits at best. I think that's the challenge. And again, it's not the technology itself that's bad. The technology is improving every day. It's, you can do a successful POC, but taking it to a production environment is hard, because where do you get the data? Is the data clean? Do you have the right processes? Do you have the right skills to govern it? Is it ethical? Does it follow the compliance? Is it secure? All those kind of, it suddenly starts to become so complicated. And I honestly think we have to address this in you can't just keep selling and buying AI. You have to address your debts that I was talking about. If you have to be successful with agentic AI, Gen AI, in next year maybe we'll be talking about quantum or something else, but the problems will remain the same. All these technology will keep coming up, but unless we address some of these fundamental issues, um, then we can blame the technology, but it's not their fault, right? I think we've not changed.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're right. I mean, there are millions of problems that need to be taken care of from an adoption standpoint. But sort of as more companies start thinking about embedding AI into regular workflows, right? Talk about any process like P2P or like AR, order to cash, any kind of workflows, right? Increasingly are seeing AI being embedded in some form or shape. So what does it mean for twofold part of my question? What does it mean to be a worker in a situation like this, where I see part of my task being taken over by some kind of an embedded AI? And number two, as a people manager, as a leader, what does it mean in terms of workforce planning?
It's a great question. I managed to have lunch with uh, a guy called Ray Kurzweil. I don't know if you know him, but he's been researching AI for 60 years. So he's the oldest living AI researcher. And I asked him a very similar question, though it was more personal. I asked him, I have a 12-year-old daughter. As she grows up, there'll be AI everywhere. What should I tell her? And he gave me a very simple, but I thought a very profound answer, which was, ask your daughter to do whatever she likes, but ask her to amplify it with AI. And I think that's what we need to do, as if you are a young professional or an old professional, or a middle-aged professional, is do whatever you're doing. It's just how do you amplify it? How do you become 50% better, 100% better using some of these tools and technologies? I think that's how does Arun become a super Arun? That's the question that we should be asking of our workforce. And I think on the workforce planning stuff, I think we should stop just managing people. I think we should be looking at orchestrating these things a lot more than just, a lot of people that I talk to assume their power lies in the number of people that they manage. I have a 20 people team, I have a 2,000 people center, I have this and that. I think we have to change that success metric a little bit, right? How are you orchestrating machines and humans to drive to the outcome? I think that fundamental issue needs to be addressed. I think success for a manager is not their span of control anymore, but it's how do you orchestrate that. But I think the answer is pretty simple to this. We've overcomplicated this in my head. Is do whatever you're doing, but amplify it with AI, and or other tools and technologies.
Yeah, Saurabh, I'm going to borrow that phrase and use it for my two daughters, because that's very well said. How do I become a better version of myself by using AI in my own work? And
Yeah,
that takes care of a lot of open eyes that I might have, or fear that I might have.
yeah, yeah. Better version, or more improved work-life balance, or more fun life, or however you want to look at it. I think that's how we should be looking at this versus everything else.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about the future a little bit. So by 2030, you have suggested that more of services will be delivered through the means of technology with very minimal human intervention. So in your view, what are the key milestones that are there in while we go to 2030, and what are some of the obstacles that we might face?
So I think obstacles I've talked about, right? I think those are the biggest obstacles. Uh, I think we have to start looking at some of the commoditized areas first. I think that's going to be the first milestone. Is can we start to look at commoditized areas? So, for example, you mentioned P2P. Why do you need 100 people accounts payable team in today's world? I don't get it. I think that needs to be disrupted first. And there are a lot of things like that, Arun. If we start to dig into it, payroll. Why do you need like 200 people managing your company's payroll or more? that you need to ask that question. Same with coding and testing. Do you need this armies of people doing basic coding and testing? A lot of that can be done by AI. Application management services. Why do we need? So I think take testing. I can go on and on, but I think that will be the first marker in this. Is you start to look at these commoditized areas, and I'm pretty sure there are smart people out there who are asking that question and coming up with value propositions of uh, of uh, of leveraging AI or using services as software instead of a pure services play. I think the second milestone will be, can we start to create a new playbook for buying and selling these things? Because I think we are trying to sell and buy new stuff, AI-led solutions, what I call services as software or whatever you call it. But we are buying and selling it with the old playbook, right? You talked about GSIs. The GSI contracting hasn't changed in the last 30 years, right? It's still I used to be a sourcing advisor. We still do a lot of that work. And I'm telling you, I can use my 20-year-old template, make it a little more colorful and a little more sexy in terms of its appearance, but it's the same damn thing. So we have not changed the way procurement still buys it the same way. We've not changed contracting structures. It's largely the same, and unless we change that playbook, I think we can have great ideas, but they'll not move forward. And then I think the third milestone will be how do boards and CEOs start to look at the broader impact of AI, and business cases are made on a balanced scorecard, not just a productivity, cost efficiency basis, because I think a lot of things will fall through the wayside if you just look at it from that siloed mindset. And notice I'm not saying technology, because I think technology will evolve on its own pace and there's lots of people talking about it. I think some of these behaviors is what I'm looking at as the big milestones. Otherwise, you can have the best technology, man, and nothing happens to it.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, so and it makes sense. The way you articulated, Saurabh, it completely makes sense in terms of how do we get to 2030 with that vision. So, Saurabh, in terms of you've spoken about RPA and process mining, and they had their own growth stories. But in today's context, what do you think will be the next RPA or process mining or the gold mine, right? That would have a hockey stick growth.
I think all these things are gonna muddle together into something. I think we've created too many categories. If you look at any RPA company today, they're all talking about agentic AI. If you look at any process mining company, they're also talking about this. So I think we are coming at these things with different lenses. RPA companies are coming at it with an automation lens. Process mining companies are coming at it with a process discovery sort of lens. But all of these things are coming together, and I think we should have like um, I used to call it the AAA trifecta of automation, analytics, and AI. I think that's the one sort of wholesome category that's going to drive this, because I don't think either of them are sort of mutually exclusive. There's a lot of overlap between them. So I think the hockey stick will be for enterprises and service providers and technology providers who can combine these, two or three things together, because you need a bit of intelligence with AI. You need a bit of automation mindset, which process automation got, and you need analytics, obviously, to drive this. I don't think they are sort of completely separate.
Yeah, you're right. So let's talk a little bit about GCCs. So GCCs in many cases were set up with the vision for finding the next low cost location and cheap labor, for lack of a better term. But then we are seeing companies use GCCs in different ways, and that also means that for a lot of GSIs, it's headwinds for a lot of GSIs, right? So given that there's a lot of AI, embedded AI automation in the picture right now, how are GCCs being impacted, and how should GSIs be responding to that?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. There's almost a tale of two cities, especially in India right now. Because if you look at most of the large GSIs, their growth rates are plateauing or declining. They're all between. There's some exceptions, obviously, but generally speaking, it's 1, 2, 3, 4% kind of. So we are no longer in that 15% growth, and they are no longer the darling of Indian economy. I think the darling of Indian economy has become the GCC because they continue to grow. And whenever I go to India, there's this whole GCC rara. That's what's gonna solve for world hunger, kind of a thing. But leaving jokes aside, I think there are two implications of AI for GCC and service provider are two sides of the same coin, right? I don't think there's much of a difference. It's one is an external third party, one is an internal sort of a construct, but they're two sides of the same coin. So AI should impact both equally. Now, I think right now GCCs are thinking of how do we actually use AI for both our internal operations, but I think they should start to think of how should they become the centers of excellence for AI adoption, right? Because if you GCCs are the most centralized function that any enterprise has today, and if our problem statement is that we are unable to go from POC to production, then I think GCC is a fantastic vehicle to drive that journey. Um, the question is whether they'll take that leadership role or whether they'll continue to have the captive mindset, etc. So that's there. But I think in terms of our long-term view is that both these models will survive. But I think it's no longer us versus them kind of a thing, right? Because there's been always a little bit of a tension between these two models. Service providers keep saying I'm better, and GCC says I'm better. But I think the realistic answer is it's going to be a bit of both. And so uh, GCCs need to work together with the service providers, and service providers need to work with GCCs to drive. I think a lot of GCCs are being set up for driving innovation arbitrage, not just cost arbitrage that you talked about today. And nobody can own innovation, right? I think nobody can be everything to anyone in today's world. So you have to build that ecosystem um, to be successful. At least that's my view on it. I think we should tone down the whole GCC rara kind of a thing and look at a slightly longer term view and say how can they actually drive innovation arbitrage, and how do they build that ecosystem, how do they build that product mindset. Otherwise, right now we're talking about GSI suffering. In 3 to 4 years time, if we don't start to change that mindset, we'll have the same conversation with GCCs.
Yeah, you're right, Saurabh. I mean, in my view, GCCs are an extension of the team, right? So they're, as you rightly said, they're part of the innovation. So not just looking from a cost leverage, but you're spot on from an innovation leverage as well, right? There's talent out there. How do we do best to take advantage of that talent? And two, you're correct again, yeah, that GCCs and GSIs need to collaborate extensively. It's not me versus you, but the more they collaborate, it's eventually they're working for the same company or the broader company, or the ecosystem or the industry, as the case might be. Awesome. So, Sarah, with that, let's move on to the rapid fire round.
Okay, that
Right.
sounds fun.
Yeah. So here's my first question to you. What is the most overhyped technology in enterprise today, and what is the most underappreciated?
So the most overhyped is AI, and the most underappreciated is also AI. And why I say that is, AI is very hyped that AI will solve for world hunger and all of that. But the reality is we are at baby steps in terms of adoption. And then it's underhyped because of the comment that I made. We're just obsessing about productivity. Anyways, I'll try and be faster because this is rapid fire and it took a long time. So
Yeah, no,
AI
that's
is
good.
the answer to both of them.
Yeah, okay, all right. Let's move the second one. If you could change one thing about how enterprises approach AI adoption, what would it be?
Don't look at AI replacing people. Look at how AI augments your people.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, going back to the way you started, the three Ps, right? The prediction, personalization, productivity. So don't just look at productivity, look at the other two as well. Spot on. All right. The third one, which industry will be the first to fully embrace the services as a software paradigm that you spoke about?
I think all of them. I don't think there is going to be an industry construct. I think it's a mindset construct. And in fact, industry, the way that we define industries is also changing, right? Every industry is changing its business model. So I don't think there is an industry that's going to be first or last. I think it's individual organizations that are going to be first and last.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. The fourth one, what is the biggest risk that organizations face if they fail to adapt to the new AI-driven services landscape?
They'll stop existing themselves.
So that's an existential risk.
It is an existential risk, right? There'll be somebody or the other who will come and disrupt you.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, and to that point, I just want to take to our audience that there are many companies that think about let's not do AI or let's defer these use cases for some more time. But then the point is, sort of to your point, is an existential crisis. If you don't disrupt yourself, you're going to be disrupted by somebody else. And
Yeah,
this whole
absolutely. And
GSIs,
and
all of
and these technology cycles are becoming shorter and shorter, right? I don't think people are even talking about Gen AI now. All the questions that I get are about agentic AI
right.
these days. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is the year of the agentic AI. Yes, and next year, hopefully, we'll meet again for a podcast like this. Or we'll be talking about something else then. All
absolutely.
right. The last one, in one sentence, what is the single most important mindset shift that leaders need to make for the next decade?
I I I I think stop obsessing about the algorithm. Start obsessing about your business. I think just business context is the most important thing right now, and stop stop worrying about what can AI solve. Start with what's the problem that you need to solve.
Yeah, start with a business first mindset, and then the technology will follow. Excellent. So that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for spending time with our viewers.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thanks, man.
Awesome. Thank you.